To everyone. Happy Thursday. Hope everyone has had a pleasant day so far. We get to explore this amazing conversation that's so relevant for each and every one of us that's living in these times, right? We have this conversation where Arjun is confronting death. He's about to go to war, and so it's natural. He has many questions about life. And today in our culture, we can see at this moment, we come across it so frequently now. So every one of us is asking, who is so-and-so? The body is there. Who am I? What is life about? So these same questions that we're going through, Arjun went through. So the questions he's asking is so relevant to us because, oh, wow, this makes sense. And the way Krishna answers him is with so succinct spiritual authority, amazing. So we get to evolve from this amazing dialogue. And we are at a part of the Gita where Krishna tells Arjuna, for someone to come on this journey to try and understand who I am, you have made that resolve, that desire to figure out who am I. Your mind has to be, that desire should be so strong that it allows your mind to be one-pointed. Ekahakru nandana, one-pointed determination. And so anyone who's successful in anything in life, right? You meet a successful pianist, you meet a successful rock climber, you meet a successful artist, painter, a successful athlete, you'll see they're focused in their mind. Their mind is so focused, so dedicated. They dedicated so much of their life to it. They do it even in their dreams. Ekaha. And even so, their peers try to pull them away. Hey, let's go do this. Let's go. They're locked in. So if someone can do that for developing a material quality, we can get inspiration from them. So whenever I meet someone who's successful at what they do, I get inspiration from them because I know they have to be focused in mind to achieve their status. So we can get inspiration from that. And so when we come on this journey to figure out who am I have to have a one-pointed determination as well. So we want to associate with like-minded people because that helps us, right? If you watch those people who are successful in whatever they do, you'll see they have a group of friends who do the same thing, right? It's just so second nature. It's not a very complex to understand. Oh, wow, if I want my mind to be peaceful, if I want my mind to be my best friend, I have to associate with like-minded people, those people who are endeavoring for that, and those people who already have that mental clarity. So the more we associate with like that, our mind becomes one-pointed. You can see it's so easy to get distracted, right? We all understand, right? So easy. Oh, the yoga mat is there. You look at the yoga mat, and a friend calls you up or an email comes through. Oh, let me go surf the internet rather than the yoga mat, right? So it's so easy. So we want to be able to keep going. So that's mantra. We're at chapter 2. And that is at mantra 41 we just finished. So we're at 42 and 43. Yam imam pushpitam vacham pavadanti avapashtita Veda vada rata parta nanyan ashtiti vandina kamat mana swagapara janma karma pala padam kriya vishesha bahulam bogaishvarya gatim prati. So Krishna, remember, he just switched the conversation here. He gave Arjuna amazing analytical philosophy of the soul and the body separate. So Arjun can understand who he really is, who we really are. We are a spiritual being. We're in this body. It's like a attire, a dress. It only lasts for a while, but we are eternal. So then he switched the philosophy a few mantras ago. He says, I told you all about that analytical thing. Now I'm going to explain to you karma yoga, because Arjun has to go to action. He has to go to war. And then Krishna tells him, a little progress in understanding karma yoga can remove the greatest fear from us. So the greatest fear we already established is the greatest fear for every living entity, a cat, a dog, instinctually a human, is the fear of death. So as we get evolved spiritually, that fear of death goes down, lessen. So every day we get up to practice, goes down, goes down, goes down. So after he said that, Krishna is telling Arjuna, when you start to come onto the practice of living in this universe, action and reaction, you will come across two types of persons. You're going to come across the Bhogeshvara, right, the materialist, and you'll find a spiritualist. So a materialist is someone who's going to be doing action, everything, but just for their own sense gratification. And then you'll find a spiritual person who's doing similar action, but they call it karma yoga. That person is able to recognize God's hands, offer it to God. So Krishna is going to establish those for him now. So translation, men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say there is nothing more than this. So it's a powerful mantra, because this is a mantra, it's rebuting one of Arjun's arguments. When Arjun was speaking to Krishna, giving him his philosophy when he was depressed, who did Arjun quote it? Arjun said, the Vedas say, right? That was his. He says, oh, Krishna, the Vedas say, if I win, I will live in sin. The Vedas says this, the Vedas say this, better I stop fighting, better they kill me first. So he quoted the Vedas. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, you're quoting the Vedas, but the Vedas has to do so much with just understanding the material laws. So here Krishna is telling Arjuna, the Vedas give you so much wisdom. In the Veda, it's so vast. It's described, if you go to a Sanskrit school at 2 years old and you master Sanskrit by 12. I have a few of my friends in India. They're Sanskrit pandits. They master Sanskrit at around 12, 14 years old. They can start to read the Vedas. So if you read the Vedas from like 14 and you live to 100 years and you read for like 7 hours every day, at 100 years old, you would have only read 1/3 of the Vedas. That's how vast the Vedas is, right? So, but what is in the Vedas and who wrote the Vedas? Why is the Vedas so popular? Why did Arjuna quote it? And why is Krishna saying here, the Vedas only pertain to the flower words? Because the Vedas are considered the guidebooks of this universe. The scientists are very intelligent. The engineers are very intelligent. They make a car, a new car, When you buy a new car, what do you find in the glove compartment? A manual, how to operate that car. Because scientists know humans will make mistakes. Right? You buy a new computer, what does it comes along with? A manual, how to operate the computer. You buy a new mobile phone, what comes with it? A manual. The engineers, the scientists, they give us a manual so we operate it properly. So if the scientist knows that, the engineers, they know that, don't you think God, who created this universe, so complex, wouldn't provide us with a manual as well? So one of my teachers used to say the Vedas is a manual of the universe found in the glove compartment, right? So how to understand this universe. So the author of the Vedas, his name is Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva is considered the literary incarnation of Krishna. So Vyasadeva, when he's supposed to, he's one of the sons of Lord Brahma, right? So Vyasadeva, he's starting to put the wisdom, because the Vedas are considered Shuddha Shabda. It comes through song vibration. So initially the Vedas, Brahma revealed the Vedas to his sons, not by anything written. It was through an oral tradition. So the yoga culture descended like that. Through hearing, the disciple absorb it, realize it in their heart, speak it to their disciple heard it, realize it, continue to establish it. But then as the universe was creating, the yogis, they recognize in Kali Yuga, people won't have strong memory. So the memory in Kali Yuga, we have poor memory, right? There are certain things we can remember instantly. If someone asks you, what's your birthday? Everyone can say their birthday. If someone asks you, what did you do on the 29th of April 2011? Who can answer that right now? None of us, right? So memory is little, whereas in the previous ages, those rishis, we call them Trikalagya, they can remember past, present, future. And every now and then, we might come across a human who has that ability, an ability to remember so much, right? Srila Prabhupada's guru was like that. He could read any book, and he only read it once. And 30, 25 years later, you ask him, they would ask him, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, what's on the page of this one book, page 12? He can repeat the whole page from memory. So every now and then we find a human who has that ability. It's rare, far and beyond. So this Vedas, when Vyasadeva realized, oh wow, people will lose memory, so the wisdom will get lost. So what has been passed on in tradition through orally, we're going to put it into pen and paper. So the original Veda, right, the Rig Veda, was written on the leaf, palm leaf. So that's how we have the Vedas today. And the Vedas, what he put in there is everything through realization from Lord Brahma coming down through the disciplic succession, how the universe is shaped, astrology, all the planetary systems, gemology, how to architecture of how to build your house, how to do your garden, how to agriculture, perfection. So how to live in this universe harmoniously with it. So that's what the Veda means. Veda means knowledge. So Arjun grew up understanding the Vedas. So when he went to learn his military warfare, his teachers, Dronacharya, they taught him from the Vedas. All the fighting techniques that you find in the Vedas that Vyasadeva write, that's what Arjun learned. So Arjun understood. And as long as Arjun was learning, he was also learning some of the philosophy of the Vedas. So that's why he quoted the Vedas. The Vedas say, if we do this will happen. So Krishna is here telling him, Arjun, you're quoting the Vedas, but let me give you a deeper understanding of the Vedas. The 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva Veda, they were written down to establish the laws of this nature, how to live harmoniously with it. And within it, it teaches a lot about karma. You do this, you get that. It's very complex. It understood how nature works. So the Vedas are powerful. But Krishna here is telling him, the Vedas deal with a lot of fruitive activities. And why is that so? We could see later on, the author of the Vedas, after he finished writing the 4 Vedas, Vyasadeva, he was feeling depressed. Amazing. He wrote this amazing manual explaining astrology, everything. He still wasn't happy. So when his guru, Narada Muni, showed up to meet him one day, Narada Muni asked him, why are you, no, Narada Muni, see he's depressed. Why are you depressed? And Narada Muni understood his mentality, and Vyasadeva is searching his mind. Why am I depressed? He couldn't answer, he couldn't figure it out. But then Narada Muni, the guru, revealed to him why he was depressed. The guru says, Narada Muni told him, the reason why you're depressed is you've written the 4 Vedas. You've written so many, but you have forgot. Because all that is deal with the laws of karma, karma conduct, fruitive activities. But you haven't touched the spiritual essence of the Vedas. And that's when he realized, oh, wow, I completely ignored the spiritual dimension. So after that, Narada Muni gave him a few instructions and he meditated, and then that's when he wrote the Bhagavad Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's described by this time he was very mature. He was spiritually mature. So when he wrote the Bhagavatam, that's when he became spiritually satisfied. So the Vedas, so Krishna is telling, so that we understand that from the Bhagavatam. And here Krishna is telling the same thing. The Vedas, yes, you follow those rules, karma kanda. You do this, you get back something. But it's only take you to a certain mode of goodness. It brings you to this mode of goodness when you follow the Vedas. We follow the rules, but there's another dimension we have to go to become fully spiritual. So Krishna is telling him right here in this beautiful mantra. He says, the flowery words. He says, men with small knowledge, right? In other words, the knowledge hasn't even evolved. So Vyasadeva, when he was younger, that's when he wrote, Krishna says, men with small knowledge get attached to the fruits of reactions from the Vedas, right? In the Vedas, you do certain things, you get this. You do this, you get that. So people follow it. And especially, Krishna already established that 2 things can happen to Arjuna on this battlefield. He can die or go to the heavenly planets, or he can win and rule the planet with Dharma. So Krishna is reestablishing this point. The heavenly planets are there, and Arjuna been to those heavenly planets before. He defeated Lord Shiva in one of the heavenly planets, and that's how Lord Shiva gifted him his weapon, the Gandiva bow. So when Arjuna went to those heavenly planets, he met celestial beings. He understood life up there is longer, the pleasures are more longer, all the pleasures are much more multiplied than the earth planet. Arjuna been there before. So when Krishna is telling him here, oh, the Vedas will guarantee you to go to the heavenly planets, it's not something far from him. For a Westerner, where's the heavenly planets? Who remembers going to the heavenly planet recently? Anyone been to the heavenly planets recently? No one had a dreams of going to another dimension? Right? When we go to sleep at night, we can travel to those amazing planets, right? But the only problem is humans don't remember their dreams. So the platform, right? So anyway, Arjun didn't go there just in his astral body. Arjun had a body actually that could travel through the different dimensions. Today, we don't have those type of bodies. Our body can only survive on this atmosphere, but our astral body can move through the whole planetary system. So Krishna is telling him, Arjun, in the Vedas, it says, if you do good, you can go to these heavenly planets. That's one of the good things about following the Vedas, which give you so much pleasure, right? If you ask someone right now, what is the goal of their life? You will find a lot of people will say happiness, right? Everyone is seeking happiness because that's the nature of the Atma, the soul. The soul is pleasure seeking. So everyone wants to be happy. Now, the Vedas explain you can develop two things, material pleasures or spiritual pleasures. So in Kali Yuga, we get attached to material pleasures easier than the spiritual pleasure from within. So if you look, most people are working very hard, right? And people judge their evolution. People compares their self-worth with someone else's net worth. How many of you found yourself doing that in this life before? Comparing your self-worth with someone else's net worth. Our society installed that in us from we're kids. Get an education, get a house, get a car, right? Get material assets. There's nothing wrong with that. That's also there in the Vedas. But the Vedas, Krishna says, this is only a part. As we cultivate those material assets, we want to cultivate spiritual assets as well. So on the heavenly planets, wow, could you imagine you can live for 100,000 years? Who don't want to live, right? Who want to live for a long time? Everyone. Could you imagine the pleasures, right? It's described in the Vedas. I mean, I don't intoxicate, right? But intoxication, the Vedas explains, is on every planet, not just the Earth planet. On the heavenly planet, there's a beautiful beverage. The Vedas, Vyasadeva writes, a beautiful beverage. He just didn't say an intoxicant, just the way they describe it, a beautiful beverage called Varuni or something like that. That on the heavenly planets, you can get intoxicated. What you see on our Earth planet, people get intoxicated, is nothing compared to up there. So you can get attracted to that. The pleasures, right? The greatest pleasure we can have with our senses here, multiply that by 1,000, 100, much more. That's the pleasures on the heavenly planet. So a lot of yogis get attracted to the heavenly planets. But Arjun, he'd been there before, and then he came back. So he understands it. Now, Krishna says, it doesn't matter if you go to those planets higher, you live longer. On those planets, old age still comes, it just takes a longer time. Disease still comes, just takes a longer time. And death still comes. So even if you go to a heavenly planet, you still have to, the body still has to die. The soul is eternal. So here Krishna is telling it's just, so, and then the next thing, resulting good birth. So good birth, right? Let's work with our Earth planet. A good birth, if you want to say you have a good birth, right? You would say, well, mom and dad are there to help you, to help raise you. You're in a country where there is no starvation. You're in a country where You can be educated, right? Dependent on which gender you have, that's right. You can have a free will to choose your occupation according to your psychic ability, your intuition, your intellectual karmic evolution. You're born in a country where you don't have to worry about a bomb going over your head every so often. So that would be considered a good birth today, right? And not that many people have that. There's about 9 billion humans on the planet. A lot of brothers and sisters on this planet are born in situations where, because of their gender, they can't get educated. Because of the country they're born in, starvation exists. Because the country they're born in, they are constantly hearing missiles over their head. Some of our fellow brothers and sisters don't even see teenage years. They don't even see 30 years old. The life expectancy in some countries so low. So that would be considered a lower karmic birth. So if you're born in a country where these are available, you should know that's so Krishna refers to it here as a result, good birth. You do something good last life, that's why you get discomfort in this life. Now, someone might say, well, and that's great. You ask someone who's born in a country where they can't get educated, they can't get food, they would want to exchange their life for someone else's life in another country. And that's why we see people migrate across the planet, right? How many people live in America? I think 380 million people or something like that. But you can see how many American Indians are here. What does that mean? It means a lot of migration for a better life. So if you look at the history of American culture, North American culture, you can see people migrated constantly. People are looking for a happiness. People are looking for a place where they can grow and evolve, right? So we can see, and we still see it today. It's not like it's in the past. How many people are trying to come across the borderline, right? I grew up in a developing country. First place I wanted to go as a child was London, because of colonialism, right? Oh, the Queen and Buckingham Palace. And they tell us, where is Samia? They tell us the streets of London are paved with gold. They tell us all the bling bling in England, right? Like you grew up with this perception that people don't get sick there, people that's the perception because of that's. Yeah. But then as I started to evolve, I was like, oh no, people in England, they're still suffering, right? That's one of the first thing when I started to travel as a teenager. I remember I landed in maybe Korea, or maybe I think it was Korea, from LA to Korea, right? And when I'm looking out the airplane, I see people from every nation. You see laborers, you see, right? You see, so it's everywhere around the planet. Then when I started traveling, I landed in England the first time. I was like, man, give me the Caribbean any day over this. It was so cold. It was so rainy. I was like, nah, I like the Caribbean. A lot of times people say, Australia, and I also live in Australia, right? Australia was, the people who migrated there were not by choice. They were sent there from being prisoners. So the British, all the criminals in England, what did the British do? Send them on a boat to Australia. You guys go as far as you can. The prisoners land in Australia and were like, wow, this is heaven. We got sunshine, we got blue waters. So the Australian population, right? That's how it started with the Western, how the Western influence came in. So we see as you travel over countries, you start to realize, wait. There are certain levels of happiness in every culture. And as we're looking for we're looking for happiness, we understand, oh, some countries reduces our suffering. That's what it is. So a developed country gives you protection, gives you food, right? So all these makes us happy because you don't have to worry, dodge a missile coming. You don't have to worry someone castrates you because of your gender. There's some places on the planet, man, I traveled through some countries and as a teenager, young 20s, man, and I'm like, this is just so inhumane, the way some humans are treated. Right? It's unbelievable. So my consciousness evolved when I saw it. And so I could see why people migrate over borderlines, because people are seeking a better way of life, right? A more content place for their minds. So the Vedas explains, not only on this planet, but throughout the whole planetary system in the universe, there are some planets which are very hellish. There's some planets that are very pleasurable. So why we want to move around from planet to planet is we're trying to see where's the better pleasure, right? Why do we move from country to country? Because we're trying to have a better aspect of life. Now he says, Krishna goes on, so high birth, right? So if you're fortunate to be born in a country where you're respected, doesn't matter what gender, you're educated, doesn't matter what gender, you have equal rights, equal options to evolve, be grateful for that birth, because that birth, even on this planet, is rare. Now he says, power, right? The Vedas speak about power. Everyone is looking to have power, right? And with power, what do people normally do? Arjuna is a warrior. So Arjuna understands this force, Bala. Bala means power. Krishna's brother is called Balaram, carries spiritual power. So with power, we can see it has shifted over the generations. You were powerful if you had one cow. You were powerful if you had one farm. Today, right, it has changed. Today, you are considered powerful if you have a nuclear power, right? You can then do so much. But with power, Arjuna had the nuclear power we have today doesn't even come close to the type of nuclear power Arjuna had at his fingertips. Arjuna had those powers, and he could create those nuclear power from mantras. He not only did he could create it, but he can also dissolve it. We don't have that issue. We don't have that other half of the coin today. No one knows how to dissolve nuclear power. We can create it. How do you dissolve it? So Arjuna, he learned the art of creating a nuclear power and dissolving it. So whenever a nuclear power was shot at him, he knew how to dissolve it. Amazing. So Arjuna understood with power, you should then start to rule or dominate your providence. He's a military person, but they'll dominate it with dharma. And that's why the war is about to take place. His cousins were adharmic, evil-minded, and with their power, they were exploiting living entities. So how many governments do you see exploit living entities today? All over the place. In my country, the politicians, they sing you a lullaby. When I become prime minister, I will take care. How many of us have heard that before? And then they get in there and they just, the broad picture they showed us was actually a narrow picture. And it becomes, so we see it again and again. So that's like Arjuna's cousins. So Arjuna understand with power, you have the ability, you have a right to do dharmic stuff, to bring peace to your population, bring peace to your family, bring peace to the animals, bring peace to the plants. When you have power, that's what you should do with it. Give living entities a way to live gracefully. And whenever misuse of power is there, we see the opposite takes place. People suffer, people strive so much, anxieties in the population. So whenever we get any type of power in our day and life, right? You might have a power to be a partner, a husband, a wife. That power that you share should be able to bring peace of mind with your partner. You're a power to be a parent, a caretaker of a pet, a plant. That how to alleviate the sufferings that's existing in the living entity's consciousness. Then we grow out. You get a certain title at your job. People work under you. You have a certain power to alleviate the suffering of those who work under you. You become a yoga teacher, a meditation. You have a certain power, a certain responsibility, so that people can leave your class peaceful. They come in with a lot of rajas in your class, right? And that's why we teach Shavasana at the end. So a lot of times people come to your class, they're running from work, right? And then they stretch, move, and then they enter Shavasana. And then they leave your class. You have, completely changed. So that you have a certain responsibility to connect people to their higher self, especially, right? Yoga teacher is not just a teaching, stretching. It's about bringing a balance with people's mind, heart space, and their body. Let them remember. So we have, as a yoga teacher, I'm a yoga teacher today. That's a label, right? But then I understand with that, I have to alleviate. What is the yoga culture teaching us? The yoga culture is teaching us to help us to remember who we are. So if I'm not helping people to do that, I shouldn't call myself a yoga teacher. So every day I get up, I go deeper into this practice so that I keep evolving to that journey of self-realization. So whatever strengths you've been gifted with, you have a certain responsibility with your strength and your power. And so we want to use that as dharmically as possible. And sometimes when we're just evolving, we will make mistakes. We all misuse our power before. Who has misused their power before in one aspect or the other? Every one of us, right? So, okay, let's pick ourselves up. If you misuse that power, pick yourself up tomorrow, so that tomorrow you don't make the same mistakes. No one is perfect, but as we develop a certain karmic power from whatever we do, we want to use that power dharmically again and again and again. And on this journey of spiritual evolution, we're going to be tested again and again and again. You're going to be tested regularly. Yogi Charu, are you misusing your power? Yogi Charu, are you evolving? Are you helping people to tap into their higher self? Right? So constantly, we got to check ourselves, right? Sometimes, like Pure, we have so many teachers there, right? Margaret can attest, right? We have like 70 teachers there and so many on the sublist. And then sometimes Kali Yuga, right? Maybe a teacher might not be living to a high standard of that power. And, people bring it to my content. I'm like, I have to empathize with that being. I understand sometimes someone takes that position as a teacher and they don't fully understand the depth of how yoga is. They're just flexible. They were gymnastics before or contortionists before, and then they take the yoga, and then you can see them misuse the power. So I have to learn constantly to empathize and then inspire my friends. Hey, it's okay to make a mistake. Let's don't make it again. Let's evolve. I make mistakes, you will make mistakes. So we want to help each other to evolve more and more and more. So as a teacher, you have a certain power. Whatever you're teaching, whether you're teaching music, dance, whether you're teaching art, whether you're teaching, whatever you're teaching, do it dharmically to the best of our ability. Next part of the mantra, Krishna says, being desirous for sense gratification and opulent life, they say they are nothing more than this. So People who want these material pleasures, they look at you and says, this is the goal of my life. The goal of my life is to enjoy as many bottles, to enjoy as many, in my country, they call it, those big Cuban weed cigars. People think the goal of life is just to please their senses because they get attached to the flowery words of the Vedas. So people might not know the Vedas today, but people understand, I want to get happy. Let me eat as much as I want, hear as much as I want, see as much as I want, touch as much as I want. That gives me happiness. That's the goal of my life. But the Vedas established that, but Krishna says, the Vedas want to take us so far. So we want to be able to, wow, I get happiness from sight, tongue, this, but still I'm not fully happy. How many of us hankered for something you wanted to eat and then you ate it? And then a few hours later, you're still not satisfied. Who's been there before? All of us. So that's what Krishna is saying. Most people think that's the goal of life, to facilitate the senses. But the Vedas teach that. But so you have to learn how to transcend the Vedas. Krishna is going to explain that in a few mantras down the road. Anyway, let's meditate on the mantra. Stretch the legs out. Wiggle the ankles, the knees. Cross the legs back to where you're very comfortable. Bring the palms on the knees, touch the tip of the thumbs, tip of the index fingers. Close the eyes softly. Bring the whole body into stillness. As the physical body moves into stillness, bring your mind into the present moment, to your amazing gift called the breath. It keeps our brain active, keeps our lungs, our heart active, keeps our mind in tune, keeps our intellect evolving, this amazing breath. Identify the slight temperature change of the breath. The incoming breath is slightly cooler. The outgoing breath is slightly warmer. Gazing into the center of the eyebrows, I want you to contemplate your amazing journey in this life and recognize from a very early age, you had this instinct to be happy. From an early age, you wanted to be happy. And contemplate what made you happy when you were a little child. Maybe playing games with your friends, maybe eating certain type of food, maybe listening to certain type of music, maybe seeing certain things in nature, rainbows, butterflies, whatever made you happy as a child. As you grew, you also start to experience unhappiness. Take this opportunity to introspect when one of the food you wanted to eat didn't exist. Maybe someone else finished the cake before you get there, or someone the food was sold out. And remember how the unhappiness kicked into your mind from your taste of, from the sense of taste. Remember a time when you heard a certain music that gave you certain pleasure? Maybe your favorite curtain leader, maybe one of the amazing rock stars. You heard their music and just the words and the rhythm just move your soul, move your consciousness. You got certain pleasure from hearing it. Remember a time when the song vibration wasn't there. You couldn't listen to that person and you became a little unhappy because that song vibration was withdrawn from you. Remember a time when you got amazing fragrance through your sense of smell. You smelled an amazing essential oil or incense or flower, perfume or cologne, gave you so much pleasure. Remember a time when the sense of smell create tension in you, unhappy smell, odor. Remember a time with your sense of sight. You saw something you really love and you look at it and it just gave you amazing pleasure. Maybe your deities, maybe a sunrise or a rainbow or something you saw in the eyes that just, maybe a painting, your mind became uplifted from it, peaceful. Similarly, I want you to remember something you saw with your eyes, right? That triggered unhappiness in the mind. Maybe a ghastly scene. Maybe another living entity getting mistreated. Remember a time in the sense of the skin, the sense of touch gave you so much pleasure. It was a nice spring weather and the weather was, the skin was not too cold, not too hot. You felt very peaceful in the mind from the sense of touch. And remember the opposite of that, the sense of touch created unhappiness in the mind, was too cold or too hot. And as you sit, you introspect like this, we can see why some people will say the goal of life is to satisfy the senses. The Vedas is material, it has the law of karma. So a lot of people quote the Vedas, or even if they don't know the Vedas, they'll say the goal of life is to please the senses again and again and again. And as you look at how you're living, where you're living, you can see you might have changed address, you might have changed state, You might have changed country. We're all humans. We're all looking for a place where we can satisfy those senses. And as we look a little bit deeper, we recognize I get happiness from those senses, but those happiness only last for a while. But then there's a deeper happiness I get from within, not from outside, but from within, when I'm able to do something from a higher plane, when I do compassionate acts, empathetic acts, charitable acts. And I recognize these acts are connecting me to the charity of divinity, the compassion of divinity, the empathy of divinity, recognizing when we make those spiritual connections, God is compassionate to us, God is tolerant with us. We can then be tolerant with others, charitable. When we have that connection, there's a certain level of inner spiritual happiness. No one can take that away from us. It's deep within. The resolve, ekahaku nandana, that deep resolve of this inner journey to the inner spiritual senses. I want you to remember one time in this life when you connected to the divinity inside your heart and you did something on a higher spiritual plane. And remember the inner joy that came. And recognize if you did that once, you can do it again and again and again. Maybe do it monthly, maybe weekly, maybe if possible daily. Tap into that higher pleasure, that higher spiritual connection. And bring your awareness back to your breath. Recognizing this gift from God, this breath allows us to tap into those inner spiritual powers we have. Inner bala, yogis call it, inner spiritual power. Take a deep inhalation. Exhale slow. Move the fingers slowly. Bring the palms to the heart. Lower the brain, the skull, the eyes, to that higher self, that spiritual self, which cannot be dissolved, cannot be burnt, watered. Namaste. Lift the head, open the eyes. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you all so much for your inspiration, sharing your valuable time to evolve together with each other. Thank you so much, Helen and Zoline. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Mikunja. Thank you, Yumiko. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Harold. Thank you, Karina. Thank you, Constantina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, Subin. Mahalo, Mai. Mahalo, Greg. Thank you, Sammy. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Haribol.
Thank you.